All right. So today we're going to be talking about the three biggest prospecting mistakes made by people in the aviation industry, how to prevent them, and also what to do instead. And we're going to be using some fun tools using AI, and we're also going to use not AI. So if you are one of those purists that does not want to use AI, we've got you covered. But if you are a nerd like me and want to use every possible advantage that you have, um, we've got you covered as well. So the first thing I want to say, and this is an interesting conundrum because when I grew up, there was kind of a stigma, or at least in my neighborhood, in my family, and so on. There's a little bit of a stigma against sales or salespeople or people who were in that profession, which really kind of caused me problems for a long time. And I didn't even realize it was causing me problems until I actually got into sales and I got to the point where some of you may have seen an earlier video that I did where I had a choice to make between running my own business and continuing to run my own business, which had been working on referrals only, for quite a while, and on marketing only for a while, inbound marketing. Or I was going to have to either learn to sell or fate worse than death, I was going to have to get a real job and go out and do something else because I was just not able to support the business and I was not able to support myself because I was just refusing to do some of the things that needed to be done in sales. And it was all because of mindset, all because of this junk in my head from my family. But, if you look at the history of the aviation industry, back to Orville and Wilbur, they were amazing salespeople. They owned a bicycle shop. Some people say that the whole aviation adventure was just a publicity stunt for the bicycle shop, right? So, I mean, they were in sales. They were inviting the media to some of their biggest disasters. They were putting themselves out there. They were willing to risk their situation, their reputation, everything else because of what they wanted to do. And nothing happens until somebody sells something. This industry would not exist if it were not for salespeople. So take just a second and raise your hand. If I did this um, 5 years ago, nobody would know how to raise their hand because, we were all really new at Zoom. But now hopefully everybody does. Raise your hand if any part of your compensation depends on sales. So that would include business owners like me. It would include commission salespeople. It would include people who have a quota of some kind, people who depend on making sales to make their livelihood. Let's see how many we have from the group. Okay, we got a few. Thank you. Renee, good to see you, and Michael as well. And who else have we got that's doing that is depending on sales? Some of you guys are on salary, but I promise you that you're 2 steps away from your compensation depending on sales. Because if your company's not making sales, your salary is not going to last for very long either. So I think all of us have some dependency that we need to recognize. All right, carrying on. So what we're going to be covering today, we're going to be covering a lot in not a lot of time, but we also want to make sure that we've got time for questions. And the fact that you decided to show up today and take time out of your day when you could be selling is really a privilege that I don't take lightly. I understand that time for you is quite literally money. So spending an hour with me, I want to make sure that it is absolutely worth it for you. So if you have questions, if you have things that just maybe don't apply to you, or you're not sure how it applies to you, let's get those resolved. So feel free to jump in at any time. Angel and John will be monitoring monitoring questions in the chat, and also we want to address them as well. I don't have anybody's mic turned off by default, so if you want to jump in, feel free to do that. I think we've got few enough people that we can manage this as a crowd. We're all civilized people, right? Okay, carrying on. Okay, so first of all, what the heck is ABCI and who are we to be talking to you anyway? ABCI is it's Aviation Business Consultants International, and we do marketing primarily for aviation companies. So, sales training is something that we have done at times by request from customers, and we're going to actually make this a regular part of our business because people that don't sell tend to not be very happy with their marketing. And we've run into so many situations with clients where maybe they are getting leads coming in or their marketing is on point, but they're just not taking it over the finish line because they are not actively marketing. So that is a thing that does happen. So John might remember we had a client that we couldn't figure out why they weren't making sales, actually. We started doing their marketing and they were getting all these leads coming in. All of the numbers looked good. Their website traffic was up. Their click rates were great. All of the numbers, all of the marketing numbers looked amazing, but they weren't making sales. And upon digging into their system, we figured out that nobody was returning calls. Nobody was making calls to people who had requested a call. Nobody was setting appointments for consultations. Nobody was following up on those leads in the way that they had agreed to. So, we got into they had one of those phone systems that records activity and everything else. And so it was a pretty horrible situation. It made us look bad. It made them look bad, and yeah, typical leaky funnel. You're absolutely right, Renee. That's what was happening. A lot was coming in, but it wasn't staying in the bucket. So, we had some conversations. We had some really tough conversations about the way that they were, and the way that they were enforcing accountability with their salespeople, and also the way that their salespeople were compensated. And after a few months, we were able to really turn that around. So sometimes your marketing can be perfect, but you're still not making sales because you're not doing this. So prospecting is really, really, really important, especially in the aviation industry. Our products don't sell themselves, right? We're not t-shirts, we're not candy bars, we are not simple vending machine merchandise. We are usually very complex relationships and other things like that. So prospecting is really the gateway into the marketing funnel. And when I say marketing funnel, in aviation, it's a circle. In most industries, you'll see it look like a Y, where you have a big part at the top where it's awareness and then interest and then desire and then engagement and so on. And you've probably seen a million different versions of that, depending on, whose textbook you're reading on marketing or what consultant you're talking to about marketing. Ours is different because in aviation, there are two really weird things about it. One is that we have a very limited prospect pool. There is less than 1%, maybe 1%, depending on which part of aviation we're in, that even have an interest in what we do, much less are qualified prospects. The other thing is that it is a very high trust industry. So people like to do business with the people that they know, like, and trust, even more so than any other business. So, like if you look at real estate or whatever, you may do business with your real estate broker only once, because you buy a house, you live in it for 20 years. That's the way that works. In aviation, most people that buy airplanes are buying them once every 3-4 years, depending on the situation. So, these things are ongoing, repeated processes, right? So all of that is part of the reason that it's very different from other industries. If you want to just throw into the chat, if you have experience in a different industry, I came from the finance industry before I got into aviation more than a decade ago. But, finance is incredibly different from aviation. A lot of people come into this world, there's usually two ways that people become aviation salespeople. One is that they were a salesperson in another life. They sold cars, they sold real estate, they sold something else. The other way is that they are a product engineer or a A&T, or they are a pilot, or they're in the aviation industry in some way, and sales is new to them. So, if you want to um, put into the chat, where you're coming from and what you're doing now. So Ali is from logistics and now in aviation, and we're really happy that you are here. And we're also very pleased with your logistics because you work with us. So that's a wonderful thing. Journalism to aviation, that is a nice, I think educators and journalists make some of the very best salespeople because they're very, very good at communicating complex concepts and explaining things well and using language really well, which is really important. So we're going to be talking about that today as well. All right. Excellent. So moving along, everybody understands how prospecting fits in. And today we're going to be talking about prospecting, and we're going to touch on approaches because that's the next step in the cycle. Holding pattern, of course, just to really finish up this little section here. Most of the people that we talk to in the aviation industry, maybe more than 80%, are not going to be ready to make a transaction the first time that we talk with them. In most cases, it's 90 to possibly even 100% don't make a transaction on the first interaction. So, we have what we call the holding pattern, which is upside down here. That is a way of staying in touch with people over a long period of time. It could be days, weeks, months, or years between the time when you make the first contact with someone and the day that they actually buy your product or service. Sales is probably self-explanatory. If you're on this call, you probably know what that is. If you don't, you're probably in the wrong place. And then referrals and testimonials are just incredibly important in the aviation industry. As we mentioned, it's a very high trust industry. So if you're new to this version of a funnel, which is more of a wheel than a funnel, that's the basics of that. And Michael, we're really happy you're here as well. Logistics, IT, management consulting, wealth management. You've got a lot of different things going on there. So yeah, you'll be using all of it. That's one great thing about sales is that everything that you know can be useful in some way. Okay, so let's talk about the first mistake that people make in aviation prospecting, and that is asking for too much too soon. So even if you're asking people to get on a call with you or do a discovery call, most of the people that we talk to are incredibly busy. And if you have not earned 15 minutes of their time, they're going to be kind of put off by you asking for it. So that's an interesting conundrum. How do you earn their time? And that's one of the things that we talk about in our prospecting workshop is how to put together a cycle that provides value from day one in the relationship. And you start by giving before you start asking. Even for asking for their time is a really big ask with a lot of these folks. These are not people just sitting around waiting for a salesperson to call them, right? I very seldom, I know there are people that do this and do it very successfully, do cold calling as their first contact. I kind of feel like that's an imposition because these are the kinds of people that are super busy and they have a lot going on in their life. And if I happen to have their private cell phone number or something like that, I am not going to use it for a cold call. My first contact with them is going to be something else. And we'll talk about what some of those things are to begin with. You guys probably feel the same way or similar about getting calls. In fact, so many of us are feeling that way that you very seldom get a actual human being on the phone. You almost always get either a machine or a gatekeeper of some kind. We hired a gatekeeper about a year ago. We have somebody answer our phones. It's a live person, but we don't take calls from people that we don't know or that we're not expecting a call from. And I think that's true of a lot of people who are serious about their business. They just can't stand that kind of interruption on a continual basis. So calls are different than they used to be, and asking for somebody's time by ringing their phone is a little bit of an imposition. So you can fight me on that if you want to. I know there are people who are really, really good at that. the late great Jeremy Cox was an exception to that rule. He could call anybody at any time. They'd pick up his call and they would talk for minutes or hours or whatever. And, I would always take his calls because no matter what I was doing, it was usually very interesting. And also it was very good, but he had a skill that I don't have. So you need to pick the tools that work for you and make sure that you are not committing this error, which is asking for too much too soon, even if that's just time, right? Okay. Mistake number 2 is language that confuses rather than connects. So we had talked about how a lot of the people in this industry come from um, different parts of the world or different parts of aviation. So a lot of people that we work with or a lot of people that we coach or consult with are engineers or pilots or very smart people. A lot of these people are actual rocket scientists. They are the smartest of the smart. Uh, the problem with that is that, in a lot of cases, they don't recognize the fact that they are talking with people who don't have their background of knowledge, don't have their vocabulary, don't have a lot of the things that they have. So there's kind of a part 1 and a part 2 to this one, and that is being too generic versus uh, being very specific. Okay, so if you want to earn somebody's time, you can't do it by trying to be everything to everybody. And a lot of people, if you look at, especially the worst place for this, I think, is in a cold call or in the text on their homepage. You will see something like, "We pride ourselves on delivering cutting edge and end-to-end aviation solutions that drive unparalleled value, optimize synergies, and empower stakeholders across the aerospace system." What does that even mean, right? That they're trying to cover a broad range of possibilities and make sure that, they're not offending anybody or, that they're not excluding anybody. But by doing that, they're excluding everybody because nobody will understand that, right?
It's because they don't know.
Right? Exactly. So, yeah, and a lot of times people think, well, this makes perfect sense to me, but that's because you have the background in your
I was going to say that they don't
Yeah,
know.
go ahead. Is that Carol or Renee?
I was just going to say it's because they don't actually know what they do or what value they bring. Usually it's
Right.
lack of strategic clarity.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I was a little late. You had already moved on to something else. So sorry for interrupting you.
Oh, no, 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 no. That's great. I'm glad this is so much more fun when people participate. So I appreciate that. I appreciate everything in the chat. I appreciate if anybody wants to speak up, that's totally, totally fine. We're all grown-ups here. This is not third grade. You don't have to behave yourself, right? So anyway, no, and that's absolutely right. And that's a very important point. If you don't really know what your company does, and you're the person that's writing the website, or if you're the person doing sales and you don't really understand your own company, then that's a problem that needs to be solved as well. So that's an excellent point. Okay, mistake number 2 is language that is too jargony. And a lot of times we don't even realize that we're using jargon. And often, one of the things that happens is we're talking to people who are a step above what we think we're talking to. So, we think we're talking to engineers when we're talking to the boss, who is an MBA, but maybe not a scientist or a practitioner or a maintenance person or have the background that you expect them to have. So if you say, "I wanted to reach out and touch base regarding our vertically integrated, data-driven platform that enables predictive MX forecasting across multi-aircraft fleets with full integration to the MEL, MMEL, and discrepancy workflows via API sync." So if you are an A&P mechanic that also understands software, that also understands data flows and things like that, then this makes sense to you. But if you are a CEO that has a business degree, right, none of this is going to be native language to you, and it's not going to make you feel comfortable uh, spending your time with this person. And the last thing that anybody in aviation wants to do is to admit that they don't know something, right? That's one thing that's kind of peculiar about our prospects and thought leaders in the aviation industry is that they really don't like looking silly. They will do research prior to a meeting. They'll do all kinds of things rather than ask questions. There are exceptions to that, of course, but they're not going to take the time. If you make them work, then you're not doing your job as a salesperson by making things clear to them. So it is much, much better to take things down a step. The best example of this is Elon Musk selling the Powerwall. And however you feel about Elon Musk is totally fine. But years and years and years ago, he created a product called the Powerwall, which is a battery that will power a house. And in his pitch for venture capital for the Powerwall, and it's on YouTube, you can find it. He never uses any words that are larger than fourth grade vocabulary to explain this very complex scientific product. So, if he can do it, we can do it. Not to say that we can't ever use complex scientific language, but there's a place for it, and marketing and the first steps of marketing, and certainly prospecting is absolutely not it, right? Okay. Every once in a while, sometimes, when we do this class live, we ask people for the worst example and they end up outing their websites or other things, saying this is some really horrible language. We're not going to do that today, just in the interest of time, but I'm sure you have seen this kind of language either in a prospecting email that comes to you or on the websites of people that you look at, being in the industry and other things. So the great thing is we've got fantastic tools nowadays that can take care of this for us. I've always liked the Hemingway editor. And there's also ChatGPT, which you can say, please simplify this language so that it is understandable by my target market, which is maybe a business degree or whatever the situation is, so that you can not be making this mistake. All right, mistake number 3. Focusing on features rather than benefits. So there is a time and a place for features, but it is not in the prospecting phase. It is in the holding pattern phase. It is in the sales phase. It's later in the process. People don't care what your product is. They don't care what its features are. They don't care what it does. They don't care what all the bells and whistles are. They care what it will do for them. So, if you focus on why it does things rather than what it does, then you're going to be a whole lot better off. And once again, we've got all kinds of tools to do this with nowadays. So, if you have a hard time thinking in terms of benefits, and a lot of people coming from an engineering background or from most other backgrounds in the aviation industry, an A&P, a pilot, other things, they're very used to thinking in concrete terms. They're not used to putting themselves into the shoes of a prospect and thinking in terms of benefits as opposed to features. So that's one thing that's kind of working against us as scientists, or as, I'm going to say BSs rather than BAs, or MAs rather than MSs, depending on your background. If you are coming from a scientific rather than an artistic background, it's a little bit harder to think in terms of benefits rather than features. So that's why you need kind of a diversity of people on your team, or you need a marketing company that is able to translate some of that for you, or you can use some tools to make that happen. All right, so we're getting to the fun part of the presentation, at least for me, which is kind of the hands-on field trip part, right? We love this. Okay, so in your chat window, hopefully you have downloaded the prompt pack, the script pack, and the tracking worksheet. We're going to start with the prompt pack first, and we're going to do some voodoo to begin with. So if AI is against your religion or anything else, you may want to take a break for about 10 minutes. We'll be back. But this is really, really powerful, and it's also really, really fun. And it really helps us illustrate a lot of what we're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up. You should see. Did anybody not get the prompt pack or the script pack or everybody's got it? Everybody's, it's all, you've got it downloaded and you're ready to go. Okay, done. Looks like may have a need to get that as well. So if you are having any difficulty getting hold of these things, this is one of the coolest things that comes out of this workshop. You'll be able to take this home and use this and everything else. So we'll walk through this for just a few minutes.
Give me a minute, see if I can get it back.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll keep talking for a minute while we're making sure everybody's got it. So these prompts are for the first two phases of the funnel, prospecting and making approaches. So there are a lot of caveats with using any kind of AI. My drug of choice is ChatGPT. Other people use Gemini, Claude, other types of LLMs, and this will work just fine in any of those. But any AI program is only as good as the prompts that you feed it, the data that you feed it, and the framing that you use for your questions and the way that you use the information it gives back to you. So you have to remember, and this is sometimes hard to remember because it is so smart, it is not thinking, okay? It is synthesizing and it is remixing your data. And it does a really good job of it, but it doesn't actually think. So it's a very different way of going about organizing information than what we're familiar with from working with people.
It will use information from the internet
Uh-huh.
and what you give it. And it's got algorithms that help it come up with stuff.
Hmm.
But if you don't validate it, you have made a serious error and it will produce garbage.
Right? Garbage in, garbage out. So everybody has the prompt pack. We're good with that, John. We should proceed.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so I'm going to pull up this document and ChatGPT. Hopefully you can see both on my screen here. We'll see if we can do this in a way that makes sense. I love doing live demos. Does anybody do live demos for um, their job? Raise your hand if you do. My hat's off to you because this is like the most stressful thing ever. Is thank you, John. Is doing live demos because they are something else. So I'm just going to use a regular Chat GPT. No special bots or formulas or anything else here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this first prompt. Here's a export of our CRM data for Acme Aviation, which is our fake company. Are any of you guys old enough to remember Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, that cartoon?
Oh, yeah.
And Wile E. Coyote always had that big box from Acme company or whatever. So we always use Acme as a tribute to Wile E. Coyote as our fake company or as our example. So I'm going to paste in this prompt, and then I'm also going to paste in, and I'll show you what this is. This is a sample of data from, let's see, upload file. Da, 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 da. Acme Aviation CRM sample. So most of us have a customer relationship database of some kind, whether that's uh, Salesforce, HubSpot, Pipedrive, even MailChimp, those also have some CRM features. So most of us have a database of prospects of some kind, but we don't get the most out of that data. So what this prompt does is it helps us use machines and use the machine to get the most out of our data. Right. So, since this is Acme Aviation, I'm going to leave this prompt as it is. For your company, of course, you're going to change the company name. You're also going to change this bit where you talk about aircraft sales, MRO, management services, acquisition services. Maybe you do consulting, maybe you do software, maybe you do, medical services, or, whatever it is that you do. Change that component. Based on this data, what patterns can you identify about our most profitable customers? Please highlight key attributes like company size, location, aircraft types, or service purchased, etc. So the more data you have in your CRM, the better this is going to work. So that's going to cook for just a few minutes. And
doing that,
yeah.
let me just say that I have used this. I work with a laboratory in eastern Utah, and we've done some really crazy design and implementation using ChatGPT. However, you have got to be smarter than ChatGPT. So once you give it data and it analyzes it, it comes back and says this and thus and so, you have to look at it and go and analyze what it did and just do the sanity check at a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Because I call it the AI sandwich. You give it data, it gives you something back, and then you have to look at it again because you're going to have to refine it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you're in deep doo-doo.
Exactly. So it gave me the top 5 out of that sample of data that I gave it, and the sample was about 100. So it tells me, these are the top 5 contacts out of that sample data, and here's why. Here are the profitability drivers that it thought would be most helpful. It did it by location as well, and it's going to tell me some other information, some of which is good, some of which is not as relevant. I may not care as much about location as I do about, the service purchased, the aircraft type, etc. And then it will give me some things about, what business types are the most profitable for me, MRO or sales or management or acquisition, etc. So, those are the really interesting bits of information that make it more interesting for me as an Acme Aviation salesperson, and help me kind of focus my time on the people that are going to be the most useful for me. Okay, and then the next prompt is about a customer persona, or ICP, if you are not following my advice and using jargon. So that is your ideal customer profile. This is the type of person that is going to be the most profitable for you. And in the past, if you've done this in marketing or if you've been in sales for a while, you used to do this by some data from Gartner Group. You may have some formulas in Salesforce. You may have some other kinds of things, but a lot of it is just guesswork. What is our ideal customer profile? The nice thing about ChatGPT is that it lets us not guess. So I'm going to paste this next one in. We're trying to define our ideal customer profile based on this market. What are the top 3 buyer personas we should focus on? Include the role, the pain points, what matters most to them, and what triggers them to choose a provider. Now, this is verging on asking too much in one prompt. That's one thing that we need to be careful of, is we don't want to go too far with any one particular prompt. This may work better if I break this up, and if I'm not happy with the results, I can always do that. But I wanted to be kind of concise with this guide so that everybody would have a good starting point. And the network connection was lost. I love doing live demos. Okay, so this is the person, right? Not necessarily the company that I most want to do business with as a salesperson for Acme Aviation. I want to pursue the corporate aviation director. So that would be like of a corporate flight department, private company with an in-house flight department, oil and gas, finance, manufacturing, real estate, etc. So these are the things that are keeping them up at night. Once again, this is just synthesized data. This is not clairvoyant. They don't know this for sure. They are making some pretty good educated guesses based on the data that I fed them. So if I gave them 100 records and they're making these assumptions, they're going to be a lot shakier than if I have years and years of data and thousands of records, right? Cool. Once again, feel free to ask questions. If you want to throw something in here, we can throw ChatGPT a curveball, try to screw it up, those kinds of things. So, that's always a possibility as well. Okay. I also want to know what matters most to them, which is really helpful. And I also want to know what are their triggers to choose a provider, because that will give me some opportunities possibly to find a really good time to approach them. I can't be approaching everybody all the time. My time is limited, so I want to make sure that this is something that I can do. Questions so far? Looks like everybody is either fully in agreement with how this works and understands it perfectly. Okay, my persona number 2 is an entrepreneurial jet owner. So this is a high net worth individual and so forth. Once again, it gives me pain points. Um, what matters most to that person, the triggers to choose a provider. Michael, you had a question.
I was just going to make a comment, and I love some of the AI tools,
Yeah.
and yet I'm constantly reminded, as what happened yesterday. I was on the phone with someone, and they had an insight that was quite different
Okay.
than, than I would have gotten from AI.
Yes.
And so it reminded me of our book club book last month and
Hmm.
his discussion about moving away from focus groups to individual in-depth interviews.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what really happened yesterday. It wasn't even intended to be an interview, an in-depth interview. We were just talking about, thoughts and experience, and the individual had a very different perspective. And as we, kind of dug into that, it really made me think that, there's another customer persona that we should be, targeting. Uh,
Ah,
and if we had not had that discussion, I probably would not have gone down that path. So I think being able to question
hmm.
people and asking them, the chat GPT is good,
Yeah.
uh, but one of the ways to validate is to get some people on the phone and ask them,
Yeah.
hey, are these, these the things that are important to you?
Yeah.
Uh, is there something else that keeps you up at night that, I haven't covered? Getting those insights, and maybe it's unique to them,
Yeah.
but maybe it's an insight that applies to more than just them.
Absolutely. I think that is such an excellent point that, this is a surface calculation of a wide set of data. This is not a deep, thoughtful uh, processing of human interaction, and those are two different ways of thinking. So I kind of get giddy about ChatGPT because it does things so much faster and, it does all these wonderful things for us. But if you also have access to a veteran salesperson in your organization or in your network that has a lot of experience with your target market, what they say is going to trump what ChatGPT says every single time, because they have that deep human knowledge and those deep personal connections that can't be calculated. I guess is the way of putting it.
Well, and the other thing is, if one person has got an
Mhm.
issue, statistically, there's more of them that have the same thing.
Right, right. That's true. So the rest of these are kind of continuations of that targeting. One thing that we didn't mention that we should have, because today is all about just prospecting, but marketing in general, if we back up a step and think about what marketing is, most people, in fact, most people who are in the profession of marketing, or a lot of people that are in the profession of marketing, think of marketing and advertising as being almost synonymous. There are actually three elements to marketing: the list, the offer, and the presentation. Most people focus only on the presentation, that third element, and they think, it's all about the emails, it's all about the webinars, it's all about the ads. That is the last thing that we consider. The list is first, and that's why we spend so much time on targeting during prospecting to make sure that we're talking to the right people, because it doesn't matter how we present it, and it doesn't matter how good our ads are. If our list isn't right, if we're not talking to the right people, and if our offer isn't good, if it isn't the best of the options that they have available to them, then it doesn't matter how good our advertising is. So we got to get those first two elements right, the list and the offer, before we think about the presentation. That's why we're spending so much time on targeting today. We can also target by regional focus, and I'm not going to do all of these because we can just sit here and watch ChatGPT chunk text all day, which is kind of entertaining in and of itself. But I want to make sure that we're spending the time where you guys think it is the most valuable, and we have a few other things to look at. But a couple of other things just to mention briefly: optimizing for customer lifetime value is a very useful skill, whether you do it with ChatGPT or whether you do it with your old veteran sales guys sitting around a table and buying them a beer, at the end of the day. It is really, really important to understand which of our customers are the most profitable to us, because getting more customers isn't always the same thing. That will make us busier, but that doesn't make us more money. John's our CFO. I'm the salesperson, so I'm just trying to get transactions, and John's just like, we're getting a lot of little transactions. This is great, but it's just not, adding to the bottom line the way it does when we have a larger transaction. So optimizing for customer lifetime value, that's very important and very helpful. Negative ICP, this is one that not many people do, but it's also important. Who do we not want to do business with? We have had customers that have cost us more than we made from them. And I'm sure most people who've been in business for any length of time have had that happen, where there are types of customers that just aren't a good fit, and that doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. It's just they're not a good fit for us. Questions about customer lifetime value or negative ICP, anything like that? Wow. We must really be killing it if okay. So moving on, we just talked about this prospecting, which we think of mostly as that research and targeting. So once we have found the right people, we usually start with the company, narrow it down to the person, and you'll notice these prompts are kind of getting narrower as we go forward, from companies to individuals to service types, et cetera, and so on. So then once we have identified those individual prospects, you can do an export of your LinkedIn data. There is another video that walks you through that process. It is a little bit complex. You do have to get into the back end of LinkedIn and get into your privacy settings and things like that, but it's not difficult. It's like a 10-minute process. And then within 24 hours, they send you your entire LinkedIn activity file. This is a result of GDPR. They kind of hide this, but because of the European privacy laws, you have a right to all of the data that happens on a particular social platform according to European law. So they have to send you this archive. As a marketing person, I'm not that interested in privacy, but I love GDPR and the fact that LinkedIn will send you this data, and we can upload it then into ChatGPT and scrub our CRM against our LinkedIn profile. Does that make sense so far? So similar to what we talked about before, you're going to upload using this little plus sign. We've already uploaded our CRM data, so it already has that. But now I'm going to upload my LinkedIn data and say, based on what you know now, please identify 10 individuals that are the most likely to fit our ideal customer profile and include detailed notes about each. So what that will do is give me a list, just like it did before, of those fun people that are most engaged with us on LinkedIn, which is my drug of choice or my tool of choice for prospecting. All right, and then we can continue with these prompts as we did with the others. Make sense so far?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, so if you left us because we were talking about AI and you don't want to use AI, or you're not in that mode, or you're working for an entity that doesn't allow that, you can come back because we're going to talk about scripts. These are things that you do as a human being. So I'm going to get rid of this one. Okay. So we talked about 3 tools, and I usually recommend 2. In fact, in our prospecting course, we use 2. And in that example, we use one online, one offline. So the telephone and LinkedIn are often the 2 that we use, or the telephone and email. Either one work equally well. So once again, we run into a lot of folks that come from an engineering background or come from a background where they are super smart, but when they get under pressure, they start spouting jargon. They start talking about benefits rather than features. They overcomplicate a lot of things that get in the way of their prospecting. So what this is just, you don't have to go beyond this, right? You don't have to get into all of the details of your I guess the Sandler sales metaphor that they use is they spill their candy in the lobby. You don't want to walk into a retail environment and just drop everything, give everything away in the first conversation. Number 1, because you don't know whether or not they're interested. Number 2, it's out of context. And number 3, it's a waste of everyone's time. So all you want to do in your first conversation is open that conversation. And that's what these scripts are for. So you'll find, connecting with cold leads, you'll find maybe a first follow-up message. You can customize these as much as you like, but I wouldn't go much beyond the 1-liners or 2-liners. For LinkedIn, for phone, you still want to be super, super brief. Maybe mention your benefits or other things really, really briefly, but you don't want to get into too much detail. And that's really, I think, the goal of a script, is to kind of give you something to start with so that you can say, okay, I can customize this as much as I want, but it needs to be about this length and it needs to cover these topics. And that will restrict you from spilling your candy in the lobby and from wasting someone's time and giving them too much information in the first contact. Make sense? All right. Then the last thing I'm going to talk about is, and then we're going to get back to our presentation. This is the last bit of our field trip. So this prospecting scorecard is already filled in for you. You're going to have to fill it in with, the names of your prospects. We do recommend using a top 10 method, and we go into a lot of detail in our prospecting course about how to choose your top 10 and, why we only do 10, because we want to get to know these people really, really well. We don't want to be spamming or dragnetting the world in aviation, because we have such a limited pool of prospects and we can't afford a bad first impression. And we have to get to know these people really well in order to customize to the level they're expecting. So a healthy pipeline would have a score of 500. Each of these prospects, there's 10 of them, would have a score of 50 if everything were perfect. Nothing is ever perfect, right? And all of these numbers are things that you are guessing, either by yourself or with the help of ChatGPT or with the help of your sales team, and so on. So on a scale from 1 to 10, does prospect A have the money to buy my product? 10 is, you absolutely know they do. They're from a big company, they've got discretionary income, that they're looking for a provider, etc. Do they have the authority to make this kind of a decision? So, in some cases they have a board or they have some other decision-making mechanism, and they are just a part of that decision-making situation. So you'd make them a 5 or whatever. Do they have the need for my product or service? And there's a difference between, do I think they need my product or service, and do they think they need my product or service? So as an example, we do website work for people, and I run across people who are in dire need of help with their website, but they don't necessarily think that. So, the need for them might be a 3 in their mind, and it might be a 10 in my mind. but their opinion is the one that goes here. So we put in a 3. Geography, are they really close to us? Is it somebody that we could drop in on and do a sales call or something like that? Company size, are they the ideal? Do they fit the profile of our ideal customer profile? Are they the type of company that we like to work with? Once again, 1 to 10. And engagement. So, all of these are blue except for the red one. So the blue ones are all about them. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections that have nothing to do with our activity or anything else. So we don't have any control over that, but we can determine what that is. So it's just a matter of being Sherlock Holmes and figuring that out. Engagement is the one that we have control over. So, if we can make all of these 10s, that's our job as a salesperson. Are we making that connection? Are we sending them the right messages at the right time? Are they responding back? And are we being responsive to them when they respond back? And things like that. So if we get them to a perfect score of 50, this other sheet will calculate automatically, and it will tell us how healthy our pipeline is at any given time. Does that make sense?
Looks good.
Right. So, one thing that people notice about this is that a lot of this is outside of our control. All of these blue items are outside of our control. We can investigate them, but we can't change them. And that's a problem. So, what we do is we drop them off the list if they don't have an appropriate money, authority, and need, and depending on how desperate we are at the moment and how many other prospects we have in the pipeline, we may drop people who have a score of, less than some number because we can't bring a 20 to a 50 with our own efforts. It's just not going to happen. So, what this does is it avoids us spending time on people that are not qualified. So we just drop them into our holding pattern. Maybe at some point in the future, they'll get promoted or their needs will change or, something will happen. They'll start offering a new service or a new product. Their company will evolve. Something will happen that will cause this to change. And then we can re-engage with them. But we only really want to be actively involved with up to 10 people at a time that are really likely prospects. Make sense? All right, so getting back to our presentation, let me go back to where we were. All right, so we covered the prompt pack, the script pack, and the tracking worksheet. There's a lot more to prospecting, obviously, and people have told me that I cover too much in the webinars to begin with. We hit people with a fire hose. But we want to give you, like I said, the best value we can for the hour that we spend together. Our prospecting course is actually a self-paced course with 8 modules, 8 videos, workbooks, assignments, etc., that you can go through at your own pace with videos and assignments and worksheets and online assistance and chat with aviation sales professionals. It's $6.99 per person. It's going to be $7.79 is our old price for it, but we've remastered all of the videos and all of the assignments and everything else. If you are already an ABCI customer, then you get this for free if you're one of our marketing clients. If you are not, we'd love to have you join us for marketing services, of course. That's what we do. That's our primary business is marketing consulting. And if you have one of our marketing services subscriptions, then of course you get our courses for free. Once again, this is self-defense for us. The better our clients are at sales, the better our marketing looks. It works hand in hand. So, we really, really love for our clients to be successful. And so that's why we provide this for free to people who are in our marketing lab and who are have a subscription for marketing services from us. What happens with this is if you make one sale, you've probably paid for the course. It's that good. We've used this for a number of years in its old form, but it was just getting embarrassing because the videos were teeny and, I think we did it in 2012 initially. So, the technology just wasn't what it is now for interactive video and for interactive quizzes and other things. So we remastered everything about this course, and we put a lot of work into it. Angel and John can attest to that. But I'm really proud of it, and I think it's one of the best values in the industry, because if you make even one sale, you've probably paid for the course, and you get to keep it, for 1 year. And if it takes up to 1 year to do all of the modules and bonuses and everything else, that's totally fine. You can do this, like I said, self-paced and everything else. All right. So this is the link. Let me get that from the chat window if it's not there. Da, 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 da. Of course. If you would like to join us, we would be delighted to have you. And if you are, let's see, John, do you have that link handy?
I'm looking.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so through Friday the 13th, we're offering it at $80 off, just because we'd like to have a nice group of people go through this together. Working on anything together is more fun because you get to work with other folks, and a lot of people have questions that you don't have, and those kinds of things. So it's kind of cool, and makes a lot of sense to do it that way. All right, so let me find.
I've got a hardware problem here, and I am losing stuff. So
Okay.
as soon as we get off, I'm gonna have to get something done.
All right, cool. So this is the link. Hopefully you can see this on. Okay, and it's pre-enroll and save $80. So we tried to make this super easy. I'm going to put this back in the chat window so that it's current for everyone. Yeah, if you'd like to join us, we would be delighted to have you. If you just want to use the prompt packs and other things and have any questions or anything else, you can get a free consultation with me. Just look at my calendar underneath the this is the link to buy the course. If you want to schedule with me, just scroll down a little bit and you can find the most convenient time for you if you'd like to talk about it to see if it's a good fit. Or, if you have a situation where maybe you have a group. Some companies will do this with their entire sales team at the same time, which is a lot of fun because they're on-demand courses. You can take them when you have time, and if everybody is on the same page and is learning the same thing, it's just a lot more powerful. So we do group discounts. Let me know if you have a group of 6 or more that wants to do the course, and we'd be happy to accommodate you. We do have live interaction with the course as well. So, if you have questions while you go through that, that's how you do it. So, yeah, you click the button. It comes up with a payment link for $6.99. If you'd rather do an ACH or something else, that's totally fine as well. John can set you up with that. He's our CFO, so we can make him work. And that gets done. So any questions about prospecting or about the course or about anything else we talked about today? I know we're coming up on the hour, but
Hey, Paula, I threw in the chat, how do current clients sign up?
Right. So the course itself is relaunching on July 1st. And, current clients are already pre-enrolled, basically. So you'll be getting all of the materials on July 1st. And, that'll be a really great, I think, experience for everyone. And that's why I think it would be great to do it as a group. Having a cohort go through a course is sometimes more fun than, doing it all by yourself. So it is self-paced, so everybody's going to be at a different place in the course, but a lot of people are going to have the same questions at the same time. Thank you for the question, though. That's a good question. Ali, thank you for coming. I'm glad you're here. And everybody else, thank you for coming. Once again, I don't take it lightly that you spent an hour with us, that you could have spent prospecting, so I am hoping that this will leverage the time that you spend and be well worth it. Just simply by using some of the tools and some of the techniques that we talked about. And if it was worth it for you, we'd love to hear back. And if there is somebody else that needs to see this, we will provide the recording. We're not providing the bonuses to anybody. If you didn't show up live and you're not enrolled in the course, then you missed out. So I'm really glad you were here, and I'm glad you got those things. All right. Thanks, you guys, and we'll see you again soon.